Hello, my name is Dan Renault. I'm a product marketing specialist for Case IH for combines. I'd like to review with you, if I can, the AFX 8010 and specifically the maintenance area of this machine. But before I do that, I want to spend a little bit of time on machine safety. Now, Section 0 of the AFX 8010 Operator's Manual discusses a lot of good information about safety on the machine. If you look through here, you'll find precautions and decals that will give you a good idea of what to look for, what to be careful of, and what to pay attention to when you're operating the machine. So be sure and review that section prior to operating the combine. One of the areas that's often overlooked from the standpoint of safety is utilizing the safety stand for the feeder house to hold the header up while you're working on it. Always make sure you install the safety stand prior to doing any work on the header or the feeder in the up position. It's very, very important. In addition to the feeder and header safety stand, the header also has a safety stand for the reel. Anytime you perform service work on the header and you raise the reel in the up position and install the safety stand, that'll allow you safe operation for repairs or maintenance on the reel or the cutter bar. Another area of the operator's manual I want to make you aware of, in Section 1, there's quite a bit of information about jacking the machine, loading the machine, tying the machine down. Case IH has put decals and actual tie-down points on the entire machine to make it easier for you to tie the machine down when you're loading it, transporting it, or if you want to jack the machine up to change tires or this kind of thing. There's decals again noting those areas in the operator's manual, and there's decals on the machine. All Case IH equipment includes a serial number plate to identify that product. That's true for the headers as well as the combine. It's important that you identify those serial number plates on the machines and record that information anytime that you're going after parts to repair or to do maintenance on the product. On the combine, that serial number plate for the 8010 combine is located just to the right side of the cab up here on the main support post. On the header, this particular one, the 2062, it's on the backbone of the adapter here on my left. In the AFX 8010 Combine Operator's Manual, under Section 4, you'll find a lubrication and maintenance schedule on page 3. You'll notice that they have daily service points and then 50-hour, 100-hour, and 300-hour, and so on. This is your schedule for performing the proper maintenance in a timely manner on the machine. Case IH has designed the AFX 8010 with the customer in mind when it comes to maintenance. There are no daily lube points in this combine. However, we do have a few things we'd like to check prior to operating the machine each day. Let's take a look at those. Included in the daily checks is your normal fluid level check. Made that very easy for you by grouping those items together. If you'll notice, your engine oil is located here. Your 3-speed rotor gear case level is located here. The PTO gearbox level is located here. And of course, here is your hydraulic oil level for your main hydraulic reservoir. Also, make sure that you check the engine coolant level when you're in the engine compartment doing your other fluid checks as well. Another area for daily maintenance is making sure that you remove the water from the water separator filter here on the combine on the right rear side. Make sure that you release that knob and allow that water to drain and then close it back up. Again, do this on a daily basis to keep the water out of the machine. One more area that I want you to be aware of is make sure you check the bolt torque. Do that on a daily basis when you first receive the machine, and do it each day until that torque does stabilize. That's important for safety. Just some general comments about chain maintenance. Chain should be serviced daily. The best time to do that is at the end of the day when the chain is warm. If the chain is warm and you use a good quality chain lube, that allows the material to seep into the chain and really penetrate it well for good lubrication. Putting lube on a cold chain doesn't do you a lot of good. When you also look at chain tightening, now there's a couple of these idlers that we have on this machine, both in a chain as well as a belt, that utilize this spring adjustment as far as tension. The proper adjustment for that is for the end of this tab to be even with the end of the spring. Then it's properly adjusted. If not, you tighten the nut or loosen the nut accordingly. But again, you want this tab length to be the same length as the last link in that spring. I'd like to review with you now the 50-hour service intervals for the combine. The first one I'll talk about is the air pressure for the tires. Make sure you check all the tires for proper inflation. Again, that's for weight carrying ability and for safety. Also check your batteries and service as need be, checking the electrolyte level in those batteries as well as the charge level. Also, it's time to do a little bit of lubrication. We have a lubrication chart that will outline all those lube points. There aren't very many at 50 hours. In fact, there's only 2. Let's review those. Every 50 hours, make sure that you do lubricate the eccentric bolt or eccentric hub here for the cleaning system. This would be the left side of the machine, and there'll be a corresponding one on the right side. Let's go look at that one. For access to the right-hand side eccentric cam, you open this little access door, and again, it's located right here, and there is your grease point at that point right there. Again, it's a 50-hour service interval. At 100 hours, it's time to do some additional maintenance, the first of which is to lubricate the chains. Now, the AFX 8010 only has 3 chains, one of which is your unloading auger chain up here. So perform maintenance on the chain and use a good quality chain lube for that from Case IH. In addition to that, it's time to do a couple more lube points as well, both on the front and the rear axles. Let's look at those. At 100 hours, make sure you do service the driveline spline couplers. There's 2 on each side, one on the outboard side of the drive shaft and one on the inboard side of the drive shaft. Again, you'll find those on both sides of the machine. Another 100-hour lube point is the rear axle. You want to make sure that you lubricate the rear kingpin. You'll notice the 100-hour decals here indicating lube points, and you have a lube point here at the lower kingpin and also the upper kingpin on this offset kingpin design rear axle. Again, you'll find that on both sides. Another area for maintenance and for your comfort, make sure you keep the cab air filter clean, take it out and service it as need be. Now let's look at some 300-hour interval service points, the first of which is your engine oil. We want to change engine oil and filters at 300 hours. Let's go up and take a look at that up on top. At 300-hour intervals, we want to make sure we change the engine oil. And of course, earlier we pointed out the dipsticks located here, as well as the oil filters located here. The fill point is on top of the valve cover. Now, make sure you check with the operator's manual because it gives you a full listing of details on specifications for the oil and also the amount needed for fill. Also included in the 300-hour service interval is looking at the pivot points of the chains and the different idlers that are on the machine, one of which is the slide mechanism for the unloading chain for the unloading drive here. You'll notice the slide mechanism. Lube that at 300 hours. At 300 hours, we also want you to lube the pivot point for the access ladder located here just below the platform. Additional areas for the 300-hour service interval lube points are the Power Plus drive shafts and gear cases. The lower gear case for the header drive is located here. That's of course a grease point here. You will have grease points on your splines on your PTO shafts, both at the lower and upper positions. You will also find this same type of pillar block spline drive throughout the entire drive shaft for the CVT, Power Plus drive system. Included also in the 300-hour service intervals is the bubble up auger gear case fluid check. Make sure that you do indeed check the fluid level in the bubble up auger and add as need be. Also included at 300 hours, we want to make sure we lube the front bearing in the rotor. Right here is the grease point where you apply grease at. It runs over via a tube to that front bearing. Now only put in 5 pumps at 300 hours. Don't exceed 5 pumps. Also, every 300 hours, you should go in and check all your steering ball joints and drive shafts and also your steering rods to make sure they're good and tight and no service is needed. As we progress now to the 600-hour interval service points, the one I'd like to point out to you now is the tailings drive gear case located just to the top of the tri-stream tailings processor. Check the fluid level of that gear case and add as needed. Also included in the 600-hour service interval is checking the fluid level of the unloading auger gear case. Of course, here's the gear case. The actual checkpoints here are located on the combine side of that gear case. Check that oil level in that gear case and add as need be. At 600 hours, we want to do some additional maintenance on the drivetrain and make sure that we change fluid levels in the final drives as well as the transmission. In the final drives on each side, you'll locate sight glasses on the final drive. Drain that final drive and refill with the appropriate oil. Once again, check the operator's manual for the quantity and the type and specifications. Also, underneath the combine, you have your transmission. It'll have similar type checkpoints and plugs on it as well. Make sure you change that oil again at 600 hours. Now at 600 hours, we want to once again return back to the bubble up auger. We want to change fluid this time, again in that same bubble up auger gear case, so make that service as required. Also at the 600 hour interval, we want to take a look at the rotor 3-speed gear case that actually drives the rotor. It will need to have the fluid changed again at 600 hours or annually. Again, there's a drain tube that goes down alongside the machine to allow easy draining, but make sure you drain that and refill it with the appropriate fluid. We also want to now change the fluid level in this lower header drive gear case. Again, there's plugs for checking the fluid amount, for adding, and also for draining that in that gear case. The same is true for the upper gear case for the conveyor chain. At the 600 hour interval level, we do want to service now the PTO gearbox to the main gear case. It's located here on the back of the engine. There's a drain port at the bottom to drain that oil. Again, that's Hitran, equipped with Hitran. It also has a corresponding filter, this forward filter, that needs also to be addressed and serviced and changed at that point as well. So this is a hydro filter that goes along with the main PTO gear case. At 600 hours, we have some additional grease points to also look at. They're located on the beater and or chopper drive shaft. The bearings for those are located on either side of the machine, both left and right, and you can see the little yellow cover on that grease zerk. Service that at 600 hours or annually. Also at 600 hours or annually, you want to look at changing the fuel filters in the combine. First of which is the water separator filter. Now we've serviced this along the way, but we now want to change this filter out, as well as we want to go up to the engine compartment and also change the fuel filter that's on the engine itself. We will also now service the cab recirculation filter. So at 600 hours, we ask you to replace that filter. Again, that's to maintain your comfort. Also at the 600 hour interval, you should be checking the pivot points for the self-leveling cleaning system. The front pivot point is a single point. Check that for the appropriate clearances. If it's out of specifications, please see your Case IH dealer for proper adjustment of that area. In addition, look at the rear of the self-leveling system and look at the two rollers on the rear and check them for possible wear or service that may be needed. Now as we enter the 1200 hour or annual schedule, let's look at changing the hydraulic oil for the main machine. Of course, the reservoir is located on the service deck. We want to drain that reservoir off to the side of the machine, as well as we also want to change the filter on the left-hand side of the machine as well. Also now at 1200 hours, we want to look at servicing the engine coolant. Again, that's 1200 hours or annually. Change the coolant and replace it with the coolant specified in the operator's manual. Also at 1200 hours or annually, we want to make sure we check the crankcase filter on the engine. Now there is an indicator that will help you do this. Located on the rear of the engine on the left-hand side, you'll have an indicator that will indicate when that crankcase filter is in need of service. Again, all you have to do is remove that filter and replace the filter as described in the operator's manual. Servicing the air cleaner throughout its life, we've got a monitor back here on the back side of this air cleaner that's going to monitor the restriction of the air cleaner. You will get an indication in the cab on the AFX display when the air filter is in need of service. Service it at that time, but once a year you should be doing additional maintenance on it, or at 1200 hours, and that's replacement of the primary air cleaner. Again, that's once a year. The interior or internal air cleaner, the small one inside, the safety element, should never be cleaned but should be changed every 2 years. At 1200 hours also, we want to take a look at the main cab filter. It's located just to the outside of the door of the cab on the left-hand side behind the shroud. That cab filter needs to be serviced every year. As far as throughout the year, it needs to be cleaned as need be with normal air cleaning methods for dry type elements, but once a year the element should be changed. Once again, I want to review the operator's manual here for the AFX 8010 combine and specifically go to section 4, the lubrication and maintenance section. We've covered a lot of ground today, and I just want to rethink some of the things we've talked about and revisit those items. Now, if you look at like the specifications here on page 4.2, you have a whole listing of specifications for your transmission oil, hydraulic oil, gear oil, brake fluid, and so forth. If you look over here at the next page, you will find, once again, those maintenance intervals that when you require to have maintenance. You'll notice that it's set up in daily, every 50 hours, every 100 hours. Just to clarify, at 50 hours, I do this 50-hour check. At 100 hours, I once again do the 50 plus these items in the 100 hours. When I reach 200 hours, I'm going to do the same 50 plus the 100 hours again. When I reach 300 hours, I'll repeat that process each time I go through here. Again, we haven't been able to cover everything that we'd like to today, but I think it's important that you understand that all the information is here in the operator's manual. If you have any questions or concerns, always refer back to the operator's manual. If you have any questions as you're going through here that you can't quite understand or don't quite feel comfortable with, be sure to see your dealer. He can certainly clarify that for you. The Case IH AFX 8010 Combine is an advanced product. Case IH has done their homework, done a terrific job in reducing the amount of maintenance required. Adding things like Power Plus drives that take away a series of belts and pulleys and chains you find other products has really reduced the maintenance required. However, there's still a need to do preventative maintenance. Be sure and check your schedule, do those required items at the required intervals, take care of your AFX 8010 Combine, and it'll take care of you.